A warm welcome to our panelists and attendees of the webinar Learning from Innovative Approaches in Heritage Education, held as part of ECROM lecture series. Pleased to introduce myself, Rohit Jigyasu, Project Manager in Urban Heritage, Climate Change and Disaster Risk Management at ECROM. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, ECROM, the International Center for the Study of Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property, is the intergovernmental organization working in the service of its 137 member states for promoting the conservation of all forms of cultural heritage in every region of the world. Now, the topic of today's webinar is heritage education. Heritage education is crucial right from the early age for instilling understanding and appreciation of local history and environment in young, inquisitive minds through various activities carried out as part of the school curricula. For those who wish to pursue career in heritage conservation and management, many graduate level programs are being offered by universities around the world. Furthermore, to upgrade the knowledge and skills of mid-career professionals and facilitate mutual learning and exchange on various approaches, tools and methodologies for heritage conservation and management, ECROM and several other organizations and universities have also been conducting training programs on various themes. Special programs have also been developed by various grassroots organizations targeting various sections of communities, especially those who are at the margins of the society, to reinforce identity and pride in their culture. That is often subsumed in the larger discourse. Over the years, various innovative pedagogical approaches for heritage education have been developed to impart knowledge and skills that address heritage needs for various target audiences in specific socio-cultural, economic and institutional contexts. We hold this international webinar to facilitate dialogue and exchange among heritage educators whom we invite to share valuable lessons learned from the rich experiences. We are indeed privileged to be joined today by our esteemed panelists of heritage educators who through their presentations will present various innovative initiatives. I am delighted to introduce you to our panelists today and request them to turn on their videos. So, first of all, Vikramjit Singh Ruprai, educator, author and historian, founder Heritage Shala in India. Luisa Irazu Lopez Campos, heritage education specialist, fellow of Royal Academy of Spain in Rome. Naomi Andrew Haruna, coordinator DAAD SDG Graduate School, University of Madhuguri, Nigeria. Renata Schneider, Senior Conservator, Instituto Nacional de Antropología e Historia in Mexico, INA. Muriel Verbeek, AAP Research Unit, University of Liege, Belgium, and Scientific Editor of CEROART. Nilkamal Chapagai, Director, Center for Heritage Management, Ahmedabad University, India. Dong Wei, UNESCO Chair in Cultural Resource Management, Southeast University Secretariat, UNESCO ECROM, Asian Academy for Heritage Management, and Myanmar, Senior Advisor Rick Santikwaran, the Norwegian Directorate for Cultural Heritage. So welcome all of you. Before I proceed further, may I apprise you of some of the procedures for housekeeping during this webinar. You can send your queries and comments via Q&A icon that you see at the bottom of the Zoom window. We'll take up some questions after the presentation by our panelists. In case we are unable to answer all the questions due to shortage of time, please do send us an email and we'll surely get back to you. So without further ado, let me first invite Vikramjit Singh Ruprai, founder Heritage Shala, to make his presentation. Vikramjit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rohit. I'll quickly share my screen. Just give me 1 second. Okay, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is perfectly visible. Thank you.
I'll take one more shot. Okay, I'm good. Well, I have been a software engineer most of my life, and about 15 years ago, I started exploring Delhi's monuments. You know, when I interacted with schools, during my exploration, I saw a few gaps in the education system of India. And that forced me to change my career. I have always been in love with the Indian culture, Indian heritage, and it was sad to see that we Indians do not know much about our own country. The way we teach history in schools is quite boring. We also do not differentiate between history and heritage. And the worst part is that with each ruling party, the narratives also change. The situation in India has been getting more and more delicate with each passing day. When I was interacting with students, I realized that students in most of the schools in India, they're kind of scared of history as a subject. What happens is that when someone is designing the curriculum and they try to introduce a particular topic into history, there are many organizations or many groups in India who are not comfortable with one or other narrative. As a result, what happens is that most of the narratives or a major part of that story is out, and what is left behind as plain dates. And when children are forced to remember only that much, it becomes complex or difficult for them. So therefore, I decided to develop new approaches to make this boring subject a little interesting. I try to gamify the curriculum and add experiential learning to it. And in this presentation, I'm going to share some examples of how I have done this in schools. My most popular activity so far has been dumb charts along with Pictionary. Now, usually it is played as a party game with songs and movie names. I brought this game to classroom and used words from curriculum to be guessed. As one participant enacts a topic from his or her curriculum, the rest of the class tries to guess it. Once the round is over, every child starts giving ideas on how that representation could have been better. And that's the real moment of learning, as every child is now trying to translate the topic to a visual mnemonic. I have realized that students who are not able to remember complex definitions and terminology can easily remember gestures, mnemonics, images, and this activity leverages that and also creates a light competitive environment. There's humor, there's excitement in kids. Normally when we do this activity, we see that no child stays on his or her seat. They all get up, they try to reach as close as possible to the person who's performing, they're trying to guess. So there's kind of excitement that builds up. I have another interesting thing. I made small bricks using epoxy resin. And through these, I help students understand the concept of arches, walls, and how construction used to happen in medieval times. I usually divide class into two groups. Each group can send 2 members at a time who will spend maximum 2 minutes adding layers to the tower or the wall. Now, as all the participants have finished their work, I use a slide to rush a ball towards the structure, which will damage it. The team with least destruction wins. In order to get this activity straight, the team members need good pre-planning, and it usually takes multiple rounds before students can understand how medieval structures were built and how much planning it would have taken for even a simple wall. With additional discussions, they understand the importance of bastions, ramparts, buttresses, and other such elements. And after this, I take them to actual monument and show them how close they were to reality. Other than this, I have developed a few card games, and one of them being the princely states of British India. When India got independence, there were over 600 independent kingdoms who were asked to join either India or Pakistan. 85 of these had 11 or more gun salutes and which merged with India. I created a card game based on these kingdoms. Each card contains the name of the kingdom, its flag and coat of arms, the gun salutes it had, its area and population at the time of merger with India, and the present Indian state in which its territories lie. These cards contain numbers, text, and geographic location. This helps us play games from mathematics, English, geography, and with younger children, we play games based on colors. So while kids enjoy the game through maths or English, they also learn about India and its history. And these territories are such that if you are residing anywhere in India, you pick up your car, you drive for, let's say, 100 kilometers in any direction, you will cross at least one of these kingdoms. So they are spread in such a way. And that actually helped kids understand India's geography much better. My next game aims to target a problem that every student in India faces, remembering dates. So students find difficult to remember dates, and since they are so much scared of it, they also miss learning the important stuff in those chapters. So I designed a game which in which students will pick cards and make a story out of the cards that they get. It works on simple principle of who, where, what, when, and each element is designed such that they hardly overlap on timeline. So whatever story they create will by definition be a historic fiction. And since they do not have to focus on dates, while creating the story, they will only pay attention to the characteristics of the personality, event, or site in their story, which anyways should be the core focus of our heritage education. I have seen that the humor that comes out of this activity makes everyone interested, and that gives me a better opportunity to talk about the events and personalities after the story is over. For example, recently, we were doing one activity in a school, and the participants, they got cards, Mahatma Gandhi, and the action was watching dance. So this child, he said that when Mahatma Gandhi was watching dance, and he continued his story, every child in the class laughed. After this story, I was able to hold a discussion that why across globe our political and religious leaders are, we hold them, or we expect them to hold a superficial standard and refrain from all recreational activities that normal people would do. I have seen a drastic change in students after this activity, and their perception about history, historical figures, events, it has improved a lot. Last activity that I want to discuss or present today is a newspaper activity that I make my students do. I ask students to design a newspaper that is more like an annual bulletin. It covers the period from 1st January to 31st December. And based on the participants, I change the year. So what you see on your screen is from year 1945. Students first have to do an audience study to decide what kind of paper will work better for the audience that they choose. Then they gather all the major events happened in that year. They only have to create the first page of the paper, and in that too, they can only write news headlines. So they need to identify which news item is more important than other, and also learn how to express entire depth within few characters. For example, if someone writes that America dropped atom bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the headline won't do much good for a less read audience. They understand TNT better. So a newspaper should write 20,000 tons of TNT dropped on Japanese cities, or something like this. Also, if a paper is being printed on 31st of December, the date on top should go 1st January of next year. So with such minute details, I was able to make students understand the importance and techniques of finding accurate information and deciding what and how to present. Now, these are just a few activities that are part of my year-long programs that I run in schools. I think I'm already up to my time, so I would like to thank Ikram, Rohit, for giving me this opportunity to share my work at such a prestigious platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vikram, for your thought-provoking presentation and very creative indeed. It is so important to raise awareness about heritage in young minds, and you presented such concrete examples by showing how this could be achieved through gamification, which helps in generating interest among children and the youth. So thank you again. Next, I have the pleasure of inviting Luisa Erazu Lopez Campos, Fellow of the Royal Academy of Spain. So over to you, Erazu.
Thank you very much. Just let me share the screen. Working?
Yes, it's here. You just need to move to slideshow, then it will be fine.
That's it.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's begin. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this meeting. Thank you very much. And all of you that are here today. Muchas gracias. I am Erazu Lopez Campos, PhD in Cultural and Artistic History from the Sorbonne University in Paris. I am researcher and international consultant in heritage education and citizen participation. For 15 years, I have been working with projects focused on cultural and natural heritage conservation, both in the public and private spheres. I work mainly with children and young people, and my professional career has developed both in theory and practice. Okay. The key to my work is to use my own methodology that I developed during my PhD and with which I approach my project. It is entitled Participatory Methodology of Knowledge Generation in Real Time. It consists of working in a participatory and horizontal way, involving all the actors, making them generate knowledge that allows us to understand the root of the subject. We go from practice to theory. In the field of cultural and natural heritage, I have applied my methodology to understand how citizens relate to it, how they perceive it, and what elements they consider most relevant in terms of their identity. With this, I managed to obtain a scan of heritage, a kind of scan of heritage, from the point of view of those that are involved. My methodology was conceived to work on heritage issues, but I have already adapted it to other different subjects. We can work with this like climate change or many other subjects. One of the questions that I have asked myself is why it is relevant to work with heritage. I consider that it is a dimension with which we can reinforce the identity and self-esteem of human beings, as well as improve their quality of life. That is an indispensable element for sustainability. Heritage, all that we are. This is one of the slogans resulting from one of the initiatives that I have directed, and it reflects masterfully all the meaning that heritage can have, not only in the past and in the future, but above all in the present. Heritage, all that we are, patrimonio, todo lo que somos. Part of my work revolves around understanding the process of patrimonialization, to know what each of the actors takes into account to value certain elements of their environment, how they reinterpret the past to be lived in the present and shared in the future. Heritage education and citizen participation are tools, they are tools that allow us to approach heritage from a human side, very important, from the emotions, which are the point from which each of the actors can really create links with what they consider relevant for their identity. Heritage education seeks to be a process in which, by generating experiences and involving the interested parties, we obtain results that lead to the appropriation and therefore to the conservation of heritage by those who live, use, and enjoy it. I work mainly with children and young people who are rarely listened to and rarely invited to actively participate in citizen and heritage projects. A motivated child or young person is an ambassador of the initiatives that captivate them. They have the ability to be like a megaphone, transmitting to those around them the things that interest them. An adult has very little impact on their environment, but a child or a teenager is surrounded by people interested in their well-being and in knowing what motivates them. They want to be heard, to be taken into account, and to feel part of actions and projects that impact their present. Because we have to remember that they are not just the future, they exist in the present. To make all this clear, I present two reference cases of my professional career. One in the Ministry of Culture of Spain, where for 5 years I designed and directed a national program called Patrimonio Joven, Young Heritage. In it, based on youth forums with young people from 12 to 15 years old from Latin America, Caribbean, Europe, and all the autonomous communities of Spain, knowledge was generated to obtain results that achieve, for example, this image that I'm showing you, the Youth Heritage Manifesto, or another one like this one, that is the Youth Guide to Responsible cultural tourism, among others. My most recent experience was in Rome. It is entitled Rethinking Heritage, Ripensare il Patrimonio. It consisted of 21 participatory workshops with young people from 12 to 25 years old, inhabitants of the 15 municipalities of this city. In this way, we were able to understand two things. First of all, their notion of heritage, and then identify the elements that they consider important for their identity in their neighborhood. With this, we were able to compare if what they consider important coincides or not with what the official institutions consider heritage. One of the results was the Conceptual Map of Heritage, where we see that the concepts with which they relate the notion of heritage before the workshop are those of a dictionary definition, with words such as history, past, or inheritance. The wording of their definitions is in the third person, placing themselves as passive subjects before heritage. Once the workshop is advanced, they relate heritage to emotional and personal concepts, writing in we, placing themselves as active subjects before heritage. They use concepts such as enjoy, love, family, or home. This reflects the impact that a participatory heritage intervention can have on a citizen's conception of heritage and their relationship with it. How we understand an element condition how we relate to it. Another of the results was the conceptual map of Rome, where we captured the concepts with which they relate to their own city, to the city where they live. One of the objectives was to create a youth heritage catalog of the city to get to know it through the eye of its young people. I have developed this research in other contexts and cities, so I am generating now a comparative study. Other relevant results that I can mention throughout my professional career are, for example, the concept of portable heritage, patrimonio portatile, in which young people affirm that heritage is in constant movement, that it is not something fixed, and that it goes with us wherever we go, in a kind of heritage suitcase. Likewise, the affective, sentimental, intimate, personal, or emotional heritage, which is distinguished for being individual, unique, and relevant to an individual or collective. As well, the awareness that in the present, we can be generators of heritage, thus providing society with an active role and not only as a passive entity. It is important to emphasize today how necessary I think that the generation of youthful heritage knowledge can be for an accurate approach to cultural and natural heritage projects or policies. I have shared with you part of my professional career and my flexibility to adapt and propose initiatives in different realities and contexts in order to contribute to the understanding, reinterpretation, appreciation, appropriation, and conservation of heritage. Thank you very much and good afternoon. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Erazo, for eloquently presenting participatory methodology of knowledge generation in real time, especially for children and young people. Emotional heritage and portable heritage, the two kinds of heritage you presented, are really indeed important notions of heritage that you have introduced to us in your presentation, which we need to incorporate in our education system. So thank you once again. Now we have Naomi Andrew Haruna from the University of Madhuguri, Nigeria. Floor is yours, Naomi.
Thank you, Rohit, for having me and inviting me to participate on this platform. I teach within the university system in Madhuguri, Nigeria, and work mostly with youths and young adults in internally displaced camps, teaching arts education using artistic methodologies such as visual representation and advocating for sustainability of cultural materials. As we all know, a country's heritage is the characteristic future of its society, which is passed down from generation to generation through careful and conscious preservation. These heritages are mostly classified into two: the ecological or natural and cultural heritages. Nigeria is endowed with both of these types, but my presentation will focus on the former. It is important to mention that the contemporary status of Nigerian cultural heritages, both material and not material, has been described as endangered, which makes heritage education very important. Nigeria has tried to advance heritage education through the creation of museums and teaching of arts education in schools, though it goes way further than that, where schools and the community use the traditional arts education system called the apprentice system and oral traditions. The oral traditions within the communities are usually passed along and collaborated by kings, chiefs, deity priests, village heads, clan heads, but mostly the aged older men and women who serve as repositories and custodians of such traditions. Some of these oral narrations are in forms of tales, dance by moonlight, poems, riddles, incantations, praise songs, and recitals of traditional verses. My research usually takes place in Northeast Nigeria, where due to the Boko Haram insurgency, the use of oral traditions through visualization is an important means of ensuring knowledge creation and sustainability of cultural heritage. So the couple of slides that we're just seeing are forms that I've been using in trying to take oral traditions and then visualize them with these children. Using visuals, we try to represent these traditions in pictorial forms for easy retention and assimilation. For example, the recontextualization of alphabetic letters to suit local knowledge and the surroundings of internally displaced persons. My research further surrounds the use of traditional arts education, which uses practice-based bottom-top approaches through visual representation in educating children on the importance of continuing the knowledge creation on cultural heritage. Apart from formal art education in schools, the locals use the apprenticeship system in continuing and impacting knowledge. This system is made up of skills like carving, mostly in wood, modeling as in pottery, mold sculpture, metalwork, painting of the body, wall decorations, calabash design, weaving, metalworks in terracotta, and also beadwork. All these are forms of art education and craft that are embedded within the cultural heritage system. Generally, art education within the apprenticeship system is very functional. So all these things are things that I teach children because they are things that have been going on from one generation to the other. But due to the internally displaced situation going on, a lot of these cultural heritages were found are misplaced within the society. So that's why I go back into the camp and then we teach them again to kids. This traditional arts education curriculum may therefore be set to be society-centered. Under the apprenticeship system, education of the child is carried out based on his or her interests and also talent. This method had been described and is still being described as a trial and error method, because sometimes you teach and then when you've gone far, you notice that the child has a different interest in something else. No direct teaching is carried out like you have in the formal classrooms, Rather, the learner imbibes the method principally by practice and imitation, being guided by the customs, traditions, and conceptions of his or her immediate community. Thus, the whole village or community is therefore the child's school. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Naomi. That was amazing presentation. You made very important statement regarding the changing the approach from arts for art's sake, arts as a process to stimulate learning for cultural orientation and reorientation. You also rightfully emphasize the importance of apprentice system rather than only formal art education in schools. So that was a very important point that you brought forward. So thank you very much again, Naomi. Let us now welcome our next presenter, Renata Schneider from Instituto Nacional de Antropología y Historia, Mexico, INA. Please go ahead, Renata.
Thank you, Rohit. Hi to everybody. I'm going to pass a video, so I will turn my camera off, and I hope you enjoy the presentation. Thank you. Hello to those who have taken the time to watch and attend this meeting. I also would like to thank Ikram, and especially Rohit, for the invitation to be here among these admired colleagues. As I begin, I would like to make two clarifications. The first is that the educational approach I'm going to talk about is done as part of direct conservation projects. These ones are carried out during fieldwork seasons in which a team of conservators work on objects at the request of rural communities. We almost always do this in marginalized community, indigenous or not, and most of the time our interventions are centered in venerate objects. We do this in behalf of the National Institute of Anthropology and History, INA, the agency responsible for cultural heritage in Mexico. The second clarification revolves around the term education. We don't consider, approach, use, or define these experiences as educational processes, but as reflection campaigns, and if it's possible, we seek to follow the Latin America tradition known as interculturality, which differs from European or Anglo-Saxon multicultural processes because it emphasizes learning as an exchange of knowledge between both groups, more than just a practice of tolerance and understanding. However, this isn't always possible, and the very fact that we come from a government institution involves a certain asymmetry that sometimes, no matter how hard we try, it's difficult to break. What do we intend with these activities that I will address shortly? These are activities that seek encounters and debates around heritage and that, from a very basic point of view, are expected to extend the interaction between objects and their users once we have performed the technical interventions. A good conservation result in this context only has real meaning and depth if it enables these interactions to happen. Hence, the need of mutual understanding, both internal, according to the rules of each cultural group, and our own as a team of conservators. We implement several activities in the same community during the fieldwork season or in the following year, given that one of our most important guidelines is to establish several fieldwork seasons in the same places over a certain number of years, so that the work, which involves intervention, resymbolization, and use of what has already been preserved, is tempered by both parties and enables corrections and precisions. We carry out activities with different age groups, children, adults, teenagers, and the elderly, as well as with different types of groups according to their role or status in the villages. On this occasion, we were asked to focus only on one case, so I will. It refers to a group of Zapotec communities from the northern highlands of Oaxaca, known colloquially as the Rincon or Shitza people. These communities, each one a different political entity, usually has between 500 and 1,000 inhabitants, and they are inserted in a vast and complex mountain range. In the 19th century, a series of shrines and chapels dedicated to the Santa Cruz, the Holy Cross, were built on the entrance paths to each village, serving as a portal of pilgrims during journeys, spaces for dances and rituals, or symbolic borders against diseases. With these chapels in mind, we generated an intercommunity project, founded with private and public means, aimed both at the material conservation of the buildings and as a preventive conservation campaign of rural heritage. To achieve these, 4 young people from 4 different communities moved together to establish a temporary multi-community intervention workshop or lab, where they cared for the crosses and learned preventive conservation and basic notions of direct structural conservation with us. The participants spoke in their language freely and exchanged all kinds of points of view while living together for 3 months in the intervention lab. In turn, we worked and laughed together, and especially we learned how the objects were used and venerated in the villages, and we debated with them and among us over the choices of valuation and conservation in those contexts of use, abandonment, processions, ritual baths, among many variants that these chapels present. Once the technical work had been finished, and the buildings and crosses had been conserved, these youngsters, who also attended other workshops in their own communities, were asked to create the content of a preventive conservation radio campaign to be produced by Bu Shitza Radio Aire Zapoteco, a self-managed radio station that reaches almost 20,000 listeners in 25 Shitza communities and that can be heard online as well. The results were 4 short radio clips in Shitza on cultural heritage and preventive conservation issues, each 40 minutes long, that were broadcasted continuously for a month at least once a day. As professional conservators, we didn't contribute on the content of the clips, since we think that the interpretation and updating of what we discussed during those 3 months in the lab will reflect the reconfigurations and translations they built on the matter, but in accordance to the Zapotec mountain world, culture, and territory. For example, the notion of cultural heritage has no meaning for them, so they invented with the radio producers a rhymed slogan that refers to what their ancestors left them as a group. If anyone here wants to have access to the campaign aéreos, please write to me and I will gladly share them. In 2023, we will work on the chapels of another sub-area of El Rincón, given the great interest generated in the region because of the direct conservation work on buildings and crosses, but also for the proposals and clips generated by the radio. Mexican and Latin America Indigenous Radio addresses important and active political, cultural, medical, economical, and musical subjects, especially in the cases of the independent radio stations. Accessing the stations and promoting joint work ties is essential, as is participating and learning from digital media, because in these communities, usually the oral expression is more important and more used than the written one. To finish, I would like to say that we trust that each rural community in Mexico knows what they want to recover from their past today. Our job is to let them know that they are entitled of institutional support and that we're here to accompany them, using the media and spaces they prefer and actively trying to understand their reasons for wanting to save specific objects and not just those that the state thinks are important. Thank you very much for your time and listening.
Thank you very much, Renata, for this excellent presentation. You clearly highlighted how we can tailor heritage awareness and education for indigenous and rural communities by empowering them to identify their own heritage for protection and the ways and means of conserving them. The presentation also shows how public institutions can facilitate this process, not as regulators but as facilitators. So thank you very much again for your presentation. I have the pleasure now of inviting Muriel Verbeek from the University of Liège, Belgium, to kindly make her intervention. So let's listen to Muriel, please.
The PICOP project has the following objectives: actively promote cultural rights in the DRC through training and empowerment in heritage conservation, to encourage the recognition of a cultural and heritage identity in the DRC by involving the public in the collection and conservation of tangible and intangible cultural goods. While at the international level, the word restitution is widely publicized, the DRC speaks about the reconstitution of heritage. For the Congolese, reconstitution means claiming to be actors, gathering scattered elements of heritage both abroad and on the national territory. It also means giving meaning, power, and life back to objects and works. In this context, training in conservation, which guarantees the material durability of objects, is particularly important. It contributes to the safeguarding and enhancement of a cultural identity essential to national unity. In 2013, at the request of the DRC, Belgium had already contributed to the development of curriculum in ceramic and wood conservation in Kinshasa. The program was based on the Belgian model in accordance with the international standards. The project to develop a master's degree would allow the training of Congolese conservators in other specialties and the opening of a research axis in conservation science in collaboration with the University of Kinshasa. The aim is to encourage indigenous approach by Congolese for Congolese in the perspective of this reconstitution of the national heritage, which is not destined to be museified but revived. The initiative is financed by Wallonie-Bruxelles International and involves the Conservation Department of Académie des Beaux-Arts in Kinshasa, that of Saint-Luc in Liège, Belgium, the University of Kinshasa and the University of Liège. The contribution of each party promotes collaborative methods and peer-to-peer exchanges. The approach is Socratic, asking questions and asking each other in the hope that implicit knowledge can be objectified in a process of dialogue and collaboration. The questions do not deal with a body of well-established knowledge, but with borderline cases that pose a problemlessness. The content of the virtual exchange can be recycled into training modules, especially for museum staff. 3 webinars are planned on the conservation of painting, contemporary art, and intangible heritage. For the paintings, a part of the corpus will be composed of popular artworks. Studying the problems that these fragile folkworks have already posed and working with the Congolese conservators to find solutions is an argument in favor of a loan or even a later restitution of such collection. For contemporary art, a rework project in collaboration with ICROM at the Musée de l'Échangeur de Limete in Kinshasa will provide an opportunity for conservation students and their professor to identify objects in critical condition in the reserves. For the webinar on the tangible-intangible relationship, sensitive objects will be chosen by the Congolese stakeholders for their symbolic or religious charge. To support joint research on geographically distant objects, the University of Liège is developing a 3D digitization tool suitable for conservators, thus privileging the examination of materiality, construction techniques, surface condition, etc. It will allow the consultation and annotation of artifacts by all stakeholders and their exploitation in open access. In addition, a collaboration with the University of Louvain within the framework of the course Ingénieux Sud will allow to propose to the students a reflection on the law science, law tech applied to the conservation. The PICO project tries to identify in a pragmatic way the needs to develop an endogenous conservation in DRC. The reflection, which is inspired by extra-European experiences like in Mexico, is already oriented towards the contribution of anthropology, sociology, linguistics, the delegation of responsibility to communities. A reflection on social utilitarianism and pragmatism inspired by the interventions of Sabine Kut in Bhutan is also on the program. To conclude, what one knows, know that one knows it. What one does not know, know that one does not know it. This is true knowledge. Based on this exploration of the known and the unknown in relation to the conservation of Congolese objects, we will be able to better define the tools, including intellectual tools, to be developed in the master program and, one step further, in the doctoral program. In the meantime, we claim to be groping and progressing together in humility, the admission of our weaknesses, that sometimes of our impotence, and also in fraternity. I thank you very much.
Thanks, Muriel. Thank you so much. The project presented by you clearly shows how educational programs can be designed as you say, for endogenous conservation by promoting peer-to-peer learning, letting local stakeholders choose heritage objects, and above all, I think what you emphasize, the importance of humility. I think that's very, very important also, to be able to work with different communities, different cultures. So how you tailor your heritage programs, education programs to different cultures really require that kind of approach. So thank you so much, Muriel, for your excellent presentation. And our next speaker for today is, today's webinar is Nilkamal Chapagai, Director, Center for Heritage Management, Ahmedabad University in India. Neil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rohit. Hello, everyone. It is wonderful to be part of this webinar today. Let me start my slides. Yes. So I'm going to share our experience, our experiment for last 7 years now at Ahmedabad University in India through the Center for Heritage Management. Here, when we look at the two themes, heritage and education, what we started doing was to look at these two concepts in broader sense. So heritage, not just about monuments, but also heritage as knowledge systems, intangible cultural heritage, natural heritage, and in a more holistic way, the way that life evolves in many sense. And education, not as just meeting some objectives, but education as a process, and it's a lifelong process. Now, when we intersect these two themes, there are multiple ways one can conceptualize the intersectionality between heritage and education. And as an educational institutions, we take notes of all these different spheres. But what we decided to focus for higher education is this particular domain that I have highlighted here, education for heritage practices, which is for professionals, but also practitioners, both traditional, but also new generation of professionals. And therefore, when we think of education for heritage sector, We can think of education for heritage profession to make new professionals, and these are done through the degree programs. It can be for the practitioners like artisans and craftspeople, but also new professionals like architects, designers, and we can train them to do prepare for the heritage sectors in a different ways. It can also be education for supporting ecosystems and other stakeholders through non-degree programs. And then there can be outreach type of programs also. Again, here I'm going to focus on a degree program, and therefore it has to follow certain academic procedures, but also we want to make sure that while we do this, we are also responsible to the society, to the community, on larger agendas like the Sustainable Development Goals. So we started with some key questions on what kind of education are we looking at? And therefore, how do we pursue heritage as a subject of inquiry at a degree program was the first question that we started with. How do we analyze the issues in heritage management? And therefore, how do we conceptualize heritage management as a field of practice, which requires us to think beyond conservation, to think towards management, to connect to community, to connect to the Sustainable Development Goals, and so on and so forth. If that is the case, then how do we approach managing heritage resources, which includes traditional knowledges, not just the formal knowledges, but also traditional informal knowledges, and what are the consequences, what are the relationships with its societal and economic context and the needs of the time. And if these are the broader questions we are thinking, what kind of framework or pedagogy can we adopt? These have been some of the key guiding questions that we worked with. And as we are working since 2013, we started the program in 2015. And right around that time, UNESCO also was working on this idea of competence-based education. So competence framework was being drafted, and we're also fortunate to be part of this process through UNESCO Bangkok office. And when we prepared this document, there were 4 types of competencies that were recognized for heritage management. And within those, I'm referring here the core competencies. And if we look at core competencies, there are areas like the competencies like community rights and knowledges, sustainable development, heritage policy, principles, processes, and ethics. And then there are applying laws and regulations, also heritage education and interpretation. There are also management domain in which organizational management to human capital management, financial management. So many other competencies are recognized. Similarly, there are personal competencies and specialized competencies. What we took as the point of departure is while the specialized competencies as an architect or archaeologist or anthropologist can be obtained during the undergraduate education, can we think of a graduate level education in which we probably focus on other areas like the core competencies and managerial competencies and a little bit of personal competencies to design a program? That was our ambition. And what we decided was, as a strategy for the program design, we wanted to focus on 2 aspects. One is thinking about heritage in a critical way, so therefore critical studies and heritage, and bringing in managerial skills, management insights, so that it makes sense to people, livelihood, and so many other things. So with that broader framework in mind, we conceptualize our process to be that the center becomes a platform in which participants, which are students and other participants, faculty, communities, and professionals can come together, and this becomes a sharing platform which enables different kinds of relationships across different groups of stakeholders. And as these interactions unfold, you have different experiences being provided to the participants, to the learners, to the faculty, to everybody. And this leads into different types of learning that can happen in an academic institution. And what this means is there are certain learning experiences that happens within a classroom in a very typical standard setting, but also there are many learning that happens outside of the classroom in the field-based. And we wanted to recognize this and sort of play with these two domains and these multiple relationships. And therefore what we did was we actually made the program open to anybody with any undergraduate degree, as long as they have some interest and passion and some commitment to heritage sector. And therefore, for example, this was our very first cohort group in 2015, in which you can see multiple background people come together in a classroom. And this is how typically our classroom learning happens in a seminar format. And therefore, peer learning, interdisciplinary learning is the core of this interest. And therefore, the other part then is also to proceed the learning process in the field and learn with the other stakeholders like the farmers or craftspeople or water management experts or pastoral communities and all that. In this picture, you are seeing a session done with a farmer in a village in India. And therefore, with these things in mind and the operational thing, this is the overall structure of the program, in which we start with the inaugural seminar, which is an unlearning process as we start the program. And this is where everybody sets their goal, the processes. And then gradually the semester sequence of courses take them through a series of learning experiences. But within these experiences, we also have several components which takes them out of the university to the communities. And this is how the interactions between the classroom learning and the field-based learning happens. And eventually, through this process, we want to ensure that the learning is a holistic process. We look at both the three aspects: the knowledge building, the skills building, and attitude building as the outcome of the program. And therefore, to summarize, if I reflect on our experiences, I think where probably we try to do innovation and where learning is in threefold. One is, what kind of knowledge and skills can we impart and should we impart? And as I said, critical heritage studies has been a core focus of our program, and I think that has been working well. We have been able to engage with the heritage idea in a very critical way, but we have also been very pragmatic in looking at the creative economic frameworks. How do we connect heritage with business world? How do we bring livelihood support through the heritage? And so these kind of strategies is another set. Then along with that, the collaborative culture, not only within the classrooms as they learn from the peer, but also collaboration with different stakeholders. How do we communicate about heritage? The whole idea of interpretation, curation, and more than that, how do we co-curate? So there is this participatory process. So these are the, in a broad sense, the knowledge and skills that we develop, which might go into different sectors like the museums, to built heritage conservation, to natural heritage management, to community-based development using crafts and all that. So anything can happen, but these are some of the areas. And what kind of pedagogy that we have been using? Contextual and immersive learning, primarily with community as a core, so that it's real, but it's also comes with the traditional knowledge systems and all that. How do we together co-create academic goals and paths for each learner, so that each student can chart out their own path, and faculty are there as a facilitator, not as so the learning here is not a one-way journey. It's a collaborative dialogue. And therefore, another important thing, as I mentioned earlier, is the collaborative learning among the peers. And when that happens, the relationship between the learner and the facilitator, the university and the professionals, the relationship builds for lifelong relationship, and therefore the continuous mentoring and networking to empower the lifelong learning happens. These have been some of the outcomes of our program and the approach that we have taken, and I think we are making sense through this process. And I think if I would respond to Rohit's initial question to think about the innovative approaches we have, I think these are some of the innovations we have tried to do. It's a long way to go. We have just been doing this for the last 7 years, but I think it has been very promising. We are growing and learning, and thank you for this opportunity of sharing this. I'll be happy to engage with any conversations. But along with the program itself, we also have devised a series of conferences, workshops, but also we have a Journal of Heritage Management. These are enabling systems around the main program that we offer. Recently, we have also started at the undergraduate level as a minor. We also have been offering training programs, workshops to the professionals. So I think multiple sectors we are already working. And the next we are looking at is, for example, connecting to many of the previous presentations. How can we get heritage as an opportunity to empower the school education? So that's our next forte. So with that, I will conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Neil, for elaborating on the key principles and approaches that underpin heritage management education at your institution. As you rightly mentioned, heritage management as a field of practice requires us to think beyond conservation and safeguarding merely. You also highlighted the need for balancing classroom learning with field-based learning by linking professional and field experience along with projects and research. So I think these are very important learnings that you have been trying to implement in the curriculum you have developed at your institute. So thank you so much once again for your presentation. And now I invite Mr. Dongwei, UNESCO Chair in Cultural Resource Management, Southeast University Secretariat, UNESCO ICRAM, Asian Academy for Heritage Management, to kindly make his presentation. Over to you, Mr. Dongwei.
Okay, thank you very much, Rohit. I'm so glad to join this webinar. Actually, now we have UNESCO ICRAM Asian Heritage Management Academy here in SU. So we are very like to make a more collaboration with ICRAM through this webinar. And to you all. Let me share the PowerPoint. How to share it?
I hope you can share the your presentation.
Yeah.
So just if you can just share it. Yes, it's coming.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm happy to introduce our program here in SEU through this presentation. First of all, let me introduce. Sorry. Oh, it's
If you can
no.
move to the slideshow, is it possible for you?
Yeah. It doesn't work.
Okay, you can move by just putting your slides one by one. I mean, you may not open the slideshow because we can see your screen. So please go ahead with the next slide. Just
It's okay.
yes, please go down.
So second one here, you can see the slides. Here we are in Nanjing.
No, you need to move to the next slide. It's not coming in right now. So yes. Okay, what we can do is, Mr. Dongwei, we will have a backup for you. So we will show you a presentation. Maybe you can just, this is fine. Perfect. Please go ahead. It's fine now.
Okay, thank you. Here, my school is in Nanjing, in the Yangtze River Delta, somewhere here. And here is Shanghai. So this is the most developed area in China nowadays. Southeast University is one of the oldest university in China since 1902. And also the architecture school is from 1927. Is also the oldest one in China. And also the second, actually we have a long time collaborate with UNESCO since 1998. So our heritage education is start from that time. We have nowadays we have a lot of collaboration with different schools in different parts of the world. Since 2018, the UNESCO decided to move the AHM secretary to SEU. So we have a very good chance to have a more collaboration with UNESCO and ECOROM, and through them together with international schools. So far, we have a different platform together with UNESCO for architecture education, heritage education, and also practices work. For instance, so far we have collaborated with UNESCO for Asia Pacific Awards for cultural heritage conservation. Since last year, we moved this jury meeting in China to have an interview for each participant's work. Through such kind of collaboration, gradually we established a very good heritage education program from undergraduate education to graduate education and doctorate education. We call it a whole process for the heritage education. And also in each program, we have international students and collaborated with different international schools. This is for undergraduate program. Here we can see the main courses is urban planning and architectural design and landscape architecture education. And also we have very strong technical courses and theoretical courses. Heritage conservation is among the whole different kind of courses. So we hope to melt the idea for heritage education to all different kinds of courses to let students understand from very beginning. This is the general idea. And also for urban planning program, we have the similar ideas to combine the heritage education ideas and methodology into different programs. So students have such kind of idea again and again through different courses and throughout the whole university years in the school. So we call it a kind of lifelong heritage conservation education. So the students, they not just got the idea and the knowledge about the heritage through one or two courses, but whole different kind of courses. And so far, we established a very good international educational program. We invite the different kind of teachers from different countries to have education and open their courses. For instance, Professor Richard Engelhardt from UNESCO Bangkok. Now he's one of the guest professors here in charge for heritage education here more than 10 years already. And also we have in total more than 20 different kinds of courses related to the heritage education for different kinds of students. This is all English courses so far we have now. This is open for all kinds of students, not just overseas students. All different kinds of students, they can choose such kind of courses. So through such kind of courses, we try to combine different disciplines together, so-called across discipline education for heritage education. The main idea is to let students to understand what is happening in the world, in different parts of the world, and also through such kind of courses, they can learn from other countries what is going on and what problem they are facing too, and they can have more chance to rethink about the problems we are facing now in China. So that's the general idea. And luckily, nowadays we have AAHM secretary in our university. So we have more chance to work with more people in the world, especially for the experts in Asian countries to work out together, and also together with UNESCO Bangkok for heritage education and training. So our idea is the students can have courses in the school, and also they have social school courses outside the school. That's the general structure for heritage education nowadays. And also, by using this chance, I hope to work with more people from all over the world together for heritage education for the future. So this is our members for AAHM, especially in Asian countries. For instance, Nilkamal, he just gave a presentation just now. He's one of the member of this AHM. So we can work together through meetings, conference, and I hope for future we have more practical work to do together. And also we hope to enlarge our member numbers. So we have more people work together to think about heritage education in different parts of the world. So this is some of the institutions we're working together. So in general, our heritage education is more international oriented for students in and outside China here in the school. And in the future, we hope to have more people who be involved through international conference and training programs in China or outside China. Of course, within this 2 years, because of COVID-19, it's hard for us to move abroad for such kind of collaboration. But I hope maybe next year we can continue for such kind of collaboration.
Mr. Dongwei, if you can just conclude because we have to do the discussion as well.
Yes, I'm finished soon.
Thank
you. This is one of the conference last year, and we are going to have some more end of this year and the next year. So I hope to work with you for the future. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dongwei. Asian Academy has been a unique experiment that shows us how academic institutions across the region can collaborate to deliver various kinds of education and training programs that can support specific heritage needs, and through this process also encourage mutual learning and sharing of experiences. So I remember being part of the first Asian Academy, and from then onwards to now, it has really gone much further ahead with so many activities. So congratulations to your leadership on this and wish you all the best for this initiative. Last but not the least, I am pleased to invite Ann Nilkamal, who is the Senior Advisor at Santikwaran, the Norwegian Directorate for Cultural Heritage, to kindly make the presentation. Ann, floor is yours.
Thank you, Rohit, and thank you for inviting me to participate today. I'll share my screen with you. Is that okay? You can see it?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yes, as Rohit has already introduced me, my name is Anna Nilkamal, and I work for the Directorate for Cultural Heritage in Norway. And I'd like to share with you my experiences from organizing the international course on wood conservation technology, which was held for the 20th time earlier this year. Oh. There. Riksantikvaren, which is the Directorate for Cultural Heritage in Norway, and NTNU, which is the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, have, together with ICROM, organized the 6-week international course on wood conservation technology every other year since 1984. And this close collaboration between 3 very different institutions works exceptionally well. Riksantikvaren as a governmental body, NTNU as an academic partner, and ICROM with their extensive international network and experience with professional training. So we're very proud that the wood course, we'll call it that for short, is a part of ECROM's course portfolio on material conservation. Now, the wood course was originally developed following a recommendation made by UNESCO in the early 1980s. There was a lack of training options for professionals working with wood, and having extensive experience with wooden cultural heritage, Norway volunteered as a host country for the course. And it was originally meant as a one-off, but 40 years later, we're still going strong. And so far, almost 500 participants now from over 80 different countries have attended the 20 courses held so far. So the course is quite clearly fills a need, as we receive many times the number of applications than we have spaces for. The wood course provides the possibility for mid-career professionals within the area of conservation of wooden cultural heritage to update and specialize their skills, and breaking down barriers between individual disciplines as well as between academia and practitioners. It brings together architects, conservators, engineers, and craftsmen. And this cross-disciplinary aspect of the course widens the perspective of the participant and gives a broad and thorough understanding of the complexities and versatility of wood, allowing the participants to extend their knowledge beyond their own professions. So the course has a practical approach and favors learning by doing, with laboratory exercises, conservation workshops, field studies, museum visits, and other excursions included in the curriculum. And then it concludes with a practical examination, which awards university credits through the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. Because wood it's a universal material. It has been used all over the world since time immemorial, both for building structures, furniture, and objects. And every country and culture on Earth has wood in their heritage. And if taken properly care of, it can last for many centuries. And often wood is treated wrongly, not through ill intent, but through lack of knowledge. And most often, there is not just one right answer, but many different approaches and methods depending on the individual case. So our unofficial slogan, often repeated, is "It depends." And as participants are all professionals, learning and sharing information goes both ways. Sites that we visit and people we talk to, they also benefit and react with great positivity to the interest and outside objectivity posed by an international group. So discussions are lively, and interaction and exchange of ideas are a key part of the course. We have both national and international experts in the field of wood conservation give lectures on the course on different topics such as wood properties, biodegradation, preventative conservation, structural repairs and surface treatment, new threats, both biological and physical, relating to climate change play an increasingly important part in the program, and the introduction of basic tools on how to monitor them through risk assessment and planning adaptation measures. Now, the students are challenged throughout the course to reflect on current principles and approaches that support conservation of wooden cultural heritage. They reflect on the complexity confronted by practitioners and discuss and assess the status of conservation discourse by understanding evolving theories. The program and curriculum are never the same from year to year, but continuously evolving so as to be at the forefront of scientific and academic discourse. Feedback from participants is also crucial, and the end of course evaluation plays an important part in the planning of the next course. Now, during the pandemic, we, like so many others, went online, producing a web platform with video lectures, exercises, a discussion forum, and regular Zoom meetings. And without doubt, these courses did disseminate the academic content successfully. And we were also positively surprised by the group dynamics and active interaction from students spread out all over the world. But we did miss the hands-on element, which forms such a crucial part of the course. So perhaps an element of both is the way to go in the future. And our next course, planned for 2024, will most probably contain an element of both in a hybrid variant. Because in the end, in addition to developing their theoretical and practical knowledge, the interaction between the participants, creating an international network of professional expertise, exchanging knowledge and professional support is the key benefit of the course. So on that note, thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you, Ann. Thank you very much for explaining the objectives and the pedagogy behind the international training course on wood conservation technology that, in fact, I had the privilege of attending 22 years ago. So I do understand it has a very long history. The course has indeed succeeded in not only providing specialized professional skills, but it has also broken down the barriers between disciplines, as you rightly mentioned. It has indeed contributed towards the development of a strong professional network among the former participants of the course, and I know it well because I am part of that network as well. So of course, we also learned how the course has adapted to the online mode through the development of a web platform. So that concludes presentations by all our panelists. Let me thank once again all of you for your stimulating presentations. May I now request you to turn your cameras, because before I take up questions from the audience, I would like to pose one question to all of you and request you to respond very briefly. Now, my question is very simple. Based on your experience, what is the most important precondition or requirement that would encourage innovative approaches in heritage education? So what is it that really is required as a precondition or as something that we really need to have in order to really encourage the innovative approaches that you have all tried to showcase through your own experiences? So I will go one by one, and I will start with Vikramjit for his response to this question.
Well, Rohit, if I have understood correctly, you are looking for the precondition or what inspires us to create something when it comes to talking about heritage.
Yes.
What I've experienced is that this inspiration comes from within. When you see something, like we say that necessity is the mother of all inventions. So when we see that something is going wrong, and when you start falling in love with something as beautiful as heritage, and you really want to do something about it, you automatically start thinking about devising new ways to bring it out to masses and to people who do not enjoy it very much due to some or other reason. So the only way to do that is to bring people closer to heritage, or creative people closer to heritage, and make them fall in love with heritage, so that they can come up with new ideas to bring the larger mass who otherwise is not attracted to the monuments or other aspects of culture.
Right. Thank you so much, Vikram. Now I will ask Irazu for her response to this.
Thank you very much. I hope to understand well the question, and I will mention some specific points or details that I already was thinking about when I was listening everybody, and I think that there are like key points that I can present now with your question. I think that heritage education cannot or should not be anymore unilateral. We have to change this teacher learning in a unilateral way to someone that is learning and not getting involved really in this process. This is one of the things that I was thinking about when I was listening all the experiences. Also, I'm thinking about that heritage needs to be treated almost like personalized. That means we cannot continue taking projects to put it in practice in different places, the same one. So we have really to design experiences. And I am using the word experiences because also it's one of the things I want to say, that heritage education should create experiences on people, because this remains. So we have to begin to design experiences, but not to use the same one in different places, because it does not work. We have another thing, another detail, I think that we really want, or we really have to understand and to know what is the vision about heritage of the people that we are working with. Because heritage, I am working with this notion of heritage. Each one of us, we have a different notion and concept of heritage, and also of heritage education. And this is very interesting to see how us that works with it, we have different images. Another thing is emotions. I think that this is the key. And sometimes the heritage project or the documents, official documents, are not talking about emotions because it seems to be not serious. But I think that if we don't link the heritage with emotions, it's very difficult to get people involved. And finally, I want to say that we have to involve people that really live, use, and enjoy heritage. We have to talk about enjoying heritage, enjoying our context, enjoying the place we are, the place we live. Because with this, if we really understand how people is linked to a place where we're living, we really can make projects or something to get these people involved and getting these people like ambassadors, especially child and young people. And so this is, I don't know if I answered.
No, thank you so much, Erazo. Thank you for your very important points you raised. So Naomi, quickly, if you would also like to respond, please.
I think my answer will be very short because some of the points have already been discussed. But I would want to really stress the need to recontextualize. You know, whatever works for one place doesn't work for the other place. So that's what I've been trying to do with the example that I gave with the recontextualization of alphabetic order. And then in places like where I come from, where certain heritages are being destroyed, I found out that there is a need to re-educate people, especially young children, because we're still talking about sustainability at the end of the day. So we have to find ways to re-educate them, for them to see the importance of these things, and not just re-educate them, but also use performatory and participatory methodologies to achieve that. So that's important for me.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Renata, over to you.
Well, I think that the first thing we have to do is detect what is heritage for a certain type of group. And in that sense, try to approach and methodologize, have systemized approaches. And then after we have this systemized approach, see it, what differs, and create like a methodology for each case that it's going to be told by the people, not by us, what they need. Because in the moment we detect what's heritage for them, not for us, we can make then like workshops that are directed to what their means are. And I also think that the communication, there's a school in Mexico that's called significant communication, and we have to follow that. Understand that our communication has to be significant, there has to have some weight for them. If we don't have weight and we just talk like an institution or govern our methodologies or the conservation ethics or whatever, we're not going to make a both pair communication. And these things, what it's like the most important thing is that the communication, it's both ways all the time, and you have to temper that communication all the time. Maybe you don't like it, maybe they don't like it, and we need time to process and build something that it's meaningful for both parts. I think that's what I think.
Thank you, Renata. Yes, very valid, very important point. Muriel, about what you think?
I think everything is said. I agree with Renata and Luisa. I think the most important is the wish to collaborate, the wish to learn, and horizontal peer-to-peer relation. But I find effectively the passion, the emotion are very, very important in the to learn together. So
Yes, thank you, Muriel. Okay, Neil, how about you?
Yeah, in very brief, Rohit, I think if we want to think about heritage education, since heritage is very interdisciplinary, very complex, very broad, one of the fundamental thing is to come out of our disciplinary comfort zones. What that means is you come out of the disciplinary comfort zones, then only you will be able to look at heritage from other perspectives, other disciplinary, and therefore whether you are an individual or an institution, the fundamental thing for me as an educational approach is to approach that interdisciplinarily, and that requires us to be able to come out of that disciplinary comfort zone. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Mr. Dongwei, how about you? You have to unmute.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I think heritage education is a kind of multi-leveled things. For most of people, heritage education should be a kind of a common sense. So they should know heritage is everywhere. It's just around them. This is for most of people, I think. But for professionals, they, of course, have more and more kind of so-called preconditions. They have to know this, they have to know that. So there's different disciplines, they have their own points to understand what is heritage conservation. For instance, for sociologists, for archaeologists, for planners, for architects, they have their own special knowledge about what is heritage conservation. So that's why we should have a school education for them, for different kind of people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if you would like to respond to this as well.
Yeah, unlucky me coming right at the end, because all of the intelligent things have been said already, but I particularly resonate with Neil, with you, what you're saying about the cross-disciplinary aspect of heritage education and how important it is to mix people together, and by doing so you can renew your perspective on the same issues. No man is an island. Get out of the silo thinking and also the national silos by going international, and it's never been easier with international courses online, but also to travel and participate in international courses. The importance of particularly perhaps employers to encourage employees to participate in courses and give time and resources to invest in your employers and encourage them to keep growing throughout their career.
Yes, that's a good point as well, Ann. So we are really running a little behind the time, so I will just take 3 questions, very quick ones. One is straight coming to you, Anne. The question is, how have you managed to sustain this course for so long? What was the magic behind it? So if you can tell that.
It's a good question, because you talk about magic. Everyone who participates or teaches on the course does experience a bit of magic. And I don't know if you remember that, Rohit. It's something about getting people from all over the world together. And this is a well-known ECROM recipe as well. It is a peace project. It really is. It unites people, and by sharing problems and knowing that people are battling with the same things all over the world, it does create a unity. But obviously, funding is important. I'm very fortunate to receive funding for this course every year from the Norwegian Directorate for Cultural Heritage, who've also realized the importance of hosting the course and thereby contributing to Norway's contribution to the World Heritage Convention and other international conventions through investing in capacity building.
Thank you very much. My next question is for Neil. Neil, the question for you is, how do you balance the need of curriculum as you want to develop and the market demands? There is always a kind of a challenge between how do you match them together?
That's a really important question and very difficult to address. In my experience, one way to do that is when you keep that in mind when you design the program, and make sure that, like I said, the class-based learning and the field-based learning, when you combine them, it is difficult because in a university setting, you have to, take other classes and all that. So you can't always be in the field as much as you want. But when you find the ways of integrating that, what happens is the students also get to realize the real life situations, the market situations. And so many times in my experience, the students themselves become an ambassador to the market, to enlighten the market that this is the new way of thinking, and for us that has worked very well, because some organizations would have think, oh, what would your student do if they come as an intern to my organization? These organizations actually turn around and say, oh, can you send more students? And then can you send graduates, So I think this is one way to address them, because market is there. It's just that people are not aware. Heritage is such a concept that it's everywhere, and we just miss out. When something is so omnipresent everywhere, and I think that's what is happening. So I think pedagogy plays an important role. The other thing is education should not be like Anne said. It's not about creating an island. So when you understand that and make your program also open in a way that the other stakeholders also able to come and interact with you however they want, that creates another opportunity. And then I think that the third thing we could do is connecting to the other aspects of education that I also touched upon. It's also about educating the stakeholders. I think that is also a kind of responsibility that the educational institutions need to take up. And once that happens, then it works both ways. It's a complementary process. So that's in a nutshell. Based on my experience.
Thank you very much, Neil. Now, the last question that I would ask is the informal system or the apprentice system is very important that you emphasize. But the question is, how do you make sure that sometimes the traditional crafts or traditional systems are not so much having the demand in terms of job opportunities? So how do you link this with creating also job opportunities for those who get the education? You have to unmute.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
The apprenticeship system usually works in such a way that what is being available is what is exactly what is in the community. So whatever you are being guided through, immediately you're done, you just kind of like assimilate into the community with a job. So when you talk about, I think it's part of the fabric of both the education, the arts education system, and also the community participatory system. That's why I said it's a holistic system where it's all encompassing, really. So there is no way, in most cases that I've seen, and for us it's even better because you don't then depend on the government for a job, but you just go ahead straight on and become an artisan with something functional that the society needs. But apart from that, also targets the norms, beliefs, and value system of your community, because these things all work hand in hand based on our heritage, education, and everything that we practice within the society. Our needs are then being met, or we notice what our needs are, and then we create these things to meet up with our needs. So it's part of the fabric of the society.
And that also ensures sustainability of these initiatives.
That ensures sustainability, yeah.
As well. So thank you for responding to these questions. In fact, I have a message from our librarian our head librarian from ICROM has just posted a message. She will definitely like to contact some of the lecturers, of course, by email, but she says that she would like to take this opportunity to inform everyone that ICROM Library is currently building a heritage education library for young in collaboration with the primary school. We have won a grant within Europe Challenge 2022. It will soon be advertised on our website. So I think that's a very interesting kind of initiative which ICROM will launch. So we will of course watch out for our website, because some of you have been really working with children and the youth. So I think this is a great initiative to work with. Now we are coming towards the end of this webinar, and I would like to mention that ICROM has dedicated itself towards the capacity building of heritage professionals ever since its inception. We have actually heard from some of you how ICROM has been a partner in these initiatives. We have spearheaded many innovative pedagogical approaches that encourage sharing of knowledge and experiences between resource persons and the participants, combining classroom and field-based learning through interactive teaching tools and methods. We have also been harnessing information technology and internet to develop online and hybrid courses. In fact, much more before COVID pandemic forced us to use virtual mediums. Of course, we will continue to develop and actively forge partnerships for developing and promoting innovative initiatives for heritage education. Now, before concluding this webinar, I would like to once again express gratitude to all the panelists, all of you, please, for sparing your time and effort, and also for organizing team here at ICROM, which has been working behind the scenes, but they are really critical for us to bring these webinars to all of you. We also thank our attendees for participating in the webinar and raising important questions. The recorded version of this webinar is available on our YouTube channel linked to our website. Please note that the recordings of the previous webinars are also available at ICROM lecture series page on our website. Information on the future webinars is also made available at the same page, but now you can see that we are going to have our next webinar, which is titled Applying Digital Documentation for Sustainable Heritage Conservation and Management, which will be held on 20th October. So we hope that those who are interested in this topic will be able to also attend this. So please do visit this webinar as well. So thank you again to all of you for being with us. Please stay safe, and goodbye to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.